talk to me about your clients, many of them corporate, many of them institutional, financial clients as well. What's the message that you're going to give them about the political backdrop in France over the next several months?
Look, I mean, there's clearly a lot of relief that Macron won. There was a chance that Le Pen was going to win, that was going down over the last week, in part because of her abysmal performance in this final debate, and in part because of the leaks of Macron's emails, apparently from Russia, which were late, which didn't have a lot to them, and which kind of backfired. But even with that, this is double the vote that her father received with the National Front back in 2002. The high water mark, 35% for the National Front. It's going to make it obviously difficult to govern effectively. We still have to see what's going to happen in upcoming parliamentary elections, because Macron is very unlikely to have a majority. He's going to have to work with Les Républicains on the right. And the structural issues with a historic election where a majority of the candidates did not want anything like the establishment voting out the center-right and center-left traditional parties, and the National Front does historically well. I mean, we can say near term, great, we dodged a bullet, Macron's a pro-globalist, the markets like that. But long term, this is not the end of populism in France, very far from that.
Well, Ian, let's talk about where his mandate actually comes from, because many people that went to the voting booth this weekend over in France voted for him because they didn't want to vote for the other candidate. So does it come from the far left? Does it come from the centre right? Does it come from down the middle? How does he establish what his mandate actually is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's an establishment mandate per se. I mean, I think he has a center-left mandate, and he has a bit of a general establishment mandate. But it's very hard as someone who's not come from political office, the elected office before, with a party he's going to put together from scratch. And the center-right, the Les Républicains, are not going to all jump to his party because they'll be very concerned that that's only going to create space for the National Front going forward, as it would. So I think it's, yes, he's popular, he's charismatic, and even though a lot fewer people turned out in this election than recent elections, and certainly than in the first round, the vote, 65%, is better than the polls would have expected. So it's a significant win. But, when the labor unions are getting hit and when unemployment is still a problem, you're going to see a summer with a lot of discontent in a France where they always like to go out on the streets. That's what we're going to be talking about this summer.
Ian, that's right where I wanted to go. You went right to the domestic labor conditions and the traditional tensions of the Republican France. Help with the idea of a G0 world. If we have a G France world, what does he do? If there's no connection, what does he do?
Well, look, I mean, the way he's going to govern with the center-right party is going to be, reducing corporate tax. It's going to be pretty market-friendly, and maybe that juices growth in France, which long-term can create some support. But clearly, traditional labor in France is not going to like any of this. One thing I do think he'll do is he'll tack to the right on immigration policy. He didn't really have that going for him in the elections.
I called him, Ian.
I think he'll move.
Ian, I called him the NBA president earlier. If he does corporate tax reform, I get it. But that doesn't help Marseille, does it? That doesn't help the northeast part on the border of Belgium, that industrial part that's been so hammered. What do they want from this president, and how does he give it within the tensions, again, of a G0 France?
Look, a lot of people are going to want to have vastly greater taxation. That's why Mélenchon did so well of the rich, and wants to see a social safety net that extends to younger people. It's going to be very hard for Macron to accomplish any of that. Youth unemployment is extraordinarily high in France. Unemployment barely came up in his talking points. That's not where his election is going. And so, again, if you ask me over the course of the next 5 years, given what's happened with labor in France and productivity, given what's happened with immigration, the National Front has gone from being a fringe party that could not be spoken of in polite society to a very serious political force. And there's no reason to believe that that's going to stop with the election of Macron.
Ian. Ian, is this a vote for more Europe? And is this a vote that will bring France and Germany closer together and in a more equal way?
I think it is. And I think that, the biggest win for the markets is that Macron is going to be a very comfortable partner, either of Angela Merkel or of Martin Schulz when we see elections in Germany later this year. It's a stronger Europe. It's a more integrated Europe. And certainly, I mean, the alternative, if you had seen Le Pen come in, would have been a Europe in immediate crisis. It's going to doesn't make the Brexit negotiations any easier, frankly, because that's not something that gets decided by just France or Germany. And there are a lot of Europeans that want to show punishment of the Brits. But in terms of the ability of the Europeans to continue to run day-to-day business, to respond to the next iteration of the Greek crisis, to give the market some confidence as we have Italian elections coming up in the next year, I think that Macron will credibly do. That is a win for Europe over the course of the coming 12, 24 months. And, Trump is going to have to congratulate Macron, who clearly wasn't the guy he wanted to see win. And even though Trump has not been pro-Europe, he's going to have to recognize that, a more traditional partnership with the French and the Germans is the way that the U.S. is going to have to go. The question will be, is that alliance under Trump really going to be thrown under the bus? Because, of course, the Merkel relationship is the traditional U.S. ally that has felt most uncomfortable under the Trump presidency. Let's see where that goes now that Macron's there, too.